Good morning, everybody. Great to be here on a great London day. First, show of hands, how many people here have an ad blocker installed on their machine right now? We won't be taking pictures. It's all hush hush, and clearly, obviously, for research purposes, right? Well, we'll get into this topic. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people here in this session and also in the panel to follow. A bit of an introduction first. Ooyala, we are a digital video company, technology company, headquartered in Silicon Valley, work with a number of publishers, such as Sky Sports and News and Telegraph. About a year ago, we acquired Video Plaza, which is how I joined the business. Video Plaza is a video ad server and SSP working with some of the top broadcasters and publishers in Europe. We've continue to be acquisitive, so we just recently acquired a company called Native, which does a lot of work on the back end side of things, and we're all sort of operate as an independent subsidiary of Telstra, the Australian telco, as part of their kind of premium video strategy to have a standalone company in this space on that as well. So yeah, our product is called Pulse. It powers the video ad businesses for a lot of the people you see up here. And yeah, and anyway, we're very glad to be here. And this is a topic, obviously, we've been following with great interest as well. So how bad is the problem, right, of ad blocking? And clearly, there's been a lot of metrics and stats shown. By these stats, it's pretty bad, right? I mean, there's clearly the famous Adobe report that estimates that the revenue lost is $20-odd billion. There's an estimate that about 35% it's been growing on a pretty rapid scale, especially in Europe, so 35%. Last estimate here was around, almost 80 million users in Europe. That's probably a couple hundred million now globally. And you can kind of see here the trend. We've been seeing this, interestingly, we've been following this probably earlier than a lot of people here, just by virtue of the work we've been doing in the German market and some of the Central European markets where it started as sort of as we were joking with some people earlier, some of my German colleagues who might be in the audience here, it's a German innovation, right, ad blocking, and it's something that our German customers really flagged early on. So it's been fascinating to see. It's been this slow burn topic for a lot of, frankly, the Anglo-Saxon world, and now it's sort of this raging fire. So you can kind of see here some of the stats on the penetration or adoption of ad blockers from consumers across Europe. These are third-party stats, but they kind of actually track the stats that we're seeing as well. So much stronger adoption in the Central European markets like Germany, Poland, much less in the Anglo-Saxon markets. I would say France seems a little low in this report compared to what we see. And it's roughly the same in the U.S. in terms of the adoption we're seeing, but also much faster growing in the Anglo-Saxon markets like the U.K. and the U.S. Not surprising from a vertical perspective in terms of users of vertical sites and their levels of adoption. Here you see gaming, social networking, tech. Kind of, those users are most likely to adopt it, and on the other side, government websites and charity websites have the least level of penetration there as well. So, from our customers, what we're seeing is that on the low end, customers that have, let's say, a late adopting audience have roughly 10%, and primarily of their desktop video ad revenue at risk. All the way to, we have a site in the Nordics, a gaming property, and I mean, it's a pretty big deal for them. I mean, it's 85%. I mean, this is an existential threat to them, right, and their business model. Roughly, we're kind of seeing 30% from a premium broadcaster, publisher type of profile in terms of the revenue at risk, specifically desktop video. So obviously, kind of doing the math, it can add up to a lot, right? It's a big deal. You're paying for the content, you're paying for the bits and the bandwidth and the technology and everything else, and yet you're just not able to monetize it at all. But it's even worse than that, right? Clearly, again, we've seen the headlines. iOS 9 that was announced in the last couple of months, and we've just seen the first apps come on. This is a screenshot of 2 ad blockers being in the top 3 of paid apps right after this was launched, right? So clearly, users are sort of saying something by adopting these. Frankly, a lot of them are clearly early adopters, right? And so they're sort of they're kind of taking to it. But it's even worse than that. And there's my mother-in-law, and there she is. She's a lovely 60-something grandmother in suburban France, and that's my son, by the way. And I was there in August, and she's been in retirement for years. And when you're at all working in technology, you're automatically the family IT guy. So that was what I was called to do. And so I had to look at her computer because it was quite slow. And so she has the most ancient Windows machine you could imagine. She's using Internet Explorer. And what do I find actually installed but AdBlock Plus? I'm saying, why do you have this? And do you mind if I remove it? She actually didn't even understand what it was. When I explained to her what it did, she said, oh, no, keep that. That's the thing that blocks the ads, those annoying ads and the pop-ups. And that just blew me away. I mean, it was, to me, it's if she's got it on her machine, it's not an early adopter phenomenon anymore. And obviously, it's a very anecdotal kind of evidence, but certainly that's something I'm hearing more and more. So why is this happening? And first, worth noting, it's been happening for a while, right? I mean, ad avoidance has been something that consumers have been doing for decades, right? Whether it's it's DVRs, whether it's kind of pop-up blockers in browsers, whether it's subscribing to paid services, and frankly, it's it's also just going for a cup of tea, right? When the ad break comes on the telly, right? So this has been happening for a while. It's just that this technology makes it a lot easier, a lot more powerful. But clearly users are fed up, and actually Matt O'Neill is going to kind of talk a bit more about this in the panel right afterwards. But you see some kind of stats on kind of one. This is an interesting one, that graph there where it plots Google web searches for how to block ads in conjunction to web searches on retargeting, right? And it's a sort of a pretty, you can kind of see the trend. It's not, it's pretty much the same. You can see just some anecdotal kind of things on users being fed up of the amount of data and trackers and everything else that load on a page relative to the content that actually loads as well. And it starts becoming a lot bigger of a deal when you have when it's on mobile, right? When you have mobile data plans that may not be unlimited, when you have limited bandwidth situations, and you've got to load a ton of data just to get to the 8 kilobytes of content that you're actually looking for on the page, right? Clearly, there's industry kind of big elephants out there that have other agendas, right? Apple does not have an ad-supported business model. Google does, right? So it's actually pretty easy and frankly convenient, let's just admit it, thing for Apple to sort of introduce this as a consumer-facing thing. And it's a way to kind of really attack the Google agenda and the Android agenda as well. So how are publishers responding? I mean, I think certainly we've seen a number of different approaches to the problem, right? So I think first is awareness campaigns, right? So you see publishers that have advertised to users, hey, we notice you're using an ad blocker, consider switching it off, right? Publishers we've talked to that have done that have actually made the problem worse because they actually advertise ad blockers to other users, and so they've actually stopped those campaigns. Probably let's say the most aggressive stance is to actually just block content. So if you detect an ad blocker, the site just says, it has a message and just says, sorry, we're not going to let you through. Axel Springer in Germany recently announced that it was doing that and funneling people to the subscription product. I think I just read yesterday that City AM here in the UK is the first UK newspaper to actually do that as well, to take that stance. And you can see here Channel 4 is doing that for some. Clearly there have been legal challenges as well, primarily in Germany. Those have all failed so far, right? So these are kind of ones where the German publishers have gotten together. I also think, by the way, that that leads to some press, and again, that then makes the problem worse. Some publishers are choosing to what we call pay tribute. So pay the ad blockers their tax or whatever euphemism they've come up for, actually letting the ad through. We know Google has done this, Microsoft, Amazon, and some others. One report said that the ad blockers were asking for 30% of the unblocked revenue as sort of their tax to let the ad through. So clearly some publishers are looking at it that way and choosing to actually pay and just kind of have their ads go through. Others are choosing to bypass the blocker, right? So there's anti-ad blocking technology, and first rule of anti-ad blocking technology is you don't talk about anti-ad blocking technology, because it's very much a cat and mouse game, and this is actually a product we offer for our customers where there's technology that works very hand in hand with the player and with the ad server, and we're probably updating this every week. So we probably do a few, at least a handful of releases each month, because things are changing so much in terms of the technologies. It's a lot like malware and spyware, right, and those kinds of technologies and counter technologies to those. So this is something we've been doing for the past year, and it's been a pretty big success for the publishers that have chosen to deploy this. It's proxy-based, so it's kind of the idea is to somehow fool the ad blocker into actually letting the ad pass through as content. And it works. I mean, it's been something where just a handful of broadcasters have unlocked hundreds of millions of inventory that just is sort of free money for them, right? They wouldn't have got it before, and over 1 billion impressions that we've served in the past year just from a few broadcasters. So for one of them, it's going to make their year, right? For the digital group, otherwise they would have been in the red. So it's been a big deal for them. But there's longer-term implications, right? Business models are now being called into question, right? So we're seeing broadcasters say, should we be starting to experiment with some subscription products, right, for certain types of content, or going to a freemium type of model? And as I mentioned back in the gaming site, that's something they're evaluating right now in terms of how they look at the business model. I think the other thing is that it's going to drive content and therefore users into walled gardens, right? Whether that's Facebook, Twitter, or apps themselves. So if you're a publisher and you've got a lot of content on the mobile web, rethink that, right? You're gonna have a lot more control and not have ad blockers in your apps, right? And so we're seeing a lot of publishers now come to us saying, we want to now really revisit our app strategy and kind of double down, let's say, on the apps as well. I think it's ironically, I think it's going to actually increase the importance of direct sales and native advertising, or whatever it's being called these days, branded content and so on, right? So there's a quote here, and I think the gist of the quote is that it's going to cut out more middlemen, is what this person believes, right? It's going to be more native integrated campaigns. I think ad blockers will evolve to be more nuanced, because I think right now it's quite broad brush in terms of what they block and what they let through. And so that's, I think that will be, one implication as well. The IAB just recently this week announced a kind of initiative to lean in, as I say, or to go lean, right? So it's sort of a standard or a set of guidelines for advertisers, right, and publishers to kind of abide by around, kind of having a respectful user experience for consumers, right? So making sure it's encrypted, making sure the file sizes are small, still offering consumers the ability to have choice and agency in the matter, and being as non-invasive as possible. I think it's a worthy initiative. How effective that will actually be will remain to be seen. And ad tech, you gotta love ad tech. Everybody here, we're in ad tech, you gotta love it. The other idea was actually create a segment in your DMP to actually target those users that have ad blockers installed, and offer that to advertisers as a way to to reach a very kind of an audience that typically doesn't get ads. So funnily enough, we actually have a publisher that's actually looking into doing that. So we'll see how that goes. So look, like, it's not going to be pretty. We're seeing this already from some publishers who are, like I said, radically rethinking their business model, their approach. I'd say if you're a publisher with not so differentiated content, with most of your traffic on mobile web and desktop, you're at risk. I mean, especially depending on the type of segment or vertical you're in. It's going to be tough for you. But at the same time, it's also, we should all calm down a bit here, right? It's not as bad as we first thought. Clearly, the industry has a lot of kind of interest in bigging up the problem, but there's some headlines there. I think the report here saying that the iPhone ad blocking will only be sort of $1 billion or so. But this will be figured out over time, and there will be an evolution, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more on the panel as well. But yeah, I think the publishers that have differentiated content, a great user experience, great ad experience, I think will do just fine. And that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions. Yeah. Are people aware of how these ad blocking companies are making money? Consumers, no. I mean, I don't have any hard data to go by, but anecdotally, I don't think that consumers realize how they are. And actually, I think we're going to get into this in the panel where Matt will share kind of just like a comment thread from I think it's the Wall Street Journal about users and their perceptions of kind of what this does, right? As an example, a lot of users are using this because they think it's gonna. They're deploying ad blockers because they think it's actually gonna prevent malware. So there's a perception and education there on that.